Back to one of our top stories, the Iowa caucuses, which are just hours away. Our chief Washington correspondent, Major Garrett, and CBS News special correspondent, Alex Wagner, are both standing by in Des Moines. Look at you guys. Adorable. Right in front of a diner, of course. So we're going to start with you, Major.
Not inside the diner. Not inside the diner,
I'm sure you wish
you
next time we'll arrange it so you could be inside the diner, where it's much warmer. I'm going to start with you, Major. There's been some changes made this year to how the Iowa caucuses work. Can you just walk our viewers through those changes? I think a lot of people are probably still just getting the basics of what a caucus is, and now we've got some tweaks.
Sure. So let's go back to the basics of what a caucus is. It's not a primary. It doesn't go on all day. It has a specific time. It's a community event. You show up and you literally vote with your feet. You walk to a certain part of a room to indicate your support for your favored candidate. And if you're above 15% of all the people in the room, that candidate is called viable. But if you're not, if your candidate is less than 15%, you can leave or you can reallocate or realign with another candidate. And that's what caucus organization is all about, having people in the room to talk to those people who are with a candidate that isn't viable. Hey, come on over here, support my candidate, boost our numbers. That process will play out in 1,638 precincts tonight here in Iowa. What are the changes? Well, historically, there were several realignments. This process of moving with your feet, voting with your feet could go 3-4 times. Tonight, only twice. First realignment, second realignment, that's it. Another big change. Previously, you had 30 minutes between alignment. And if you had 4 alignments, your precinct could go for a couple hours, maybe 3 hours. Only 15 minutes between that one realignment. So what does that mean tonight? We should get numbers faster, clearer, and it should be a more compressed caucus process. One other change. The Iowa Democratic Party, for the first time, is releasing 3 sets of numbers. The delegates, each candidate is allocated, what the number was on that first alignment and that number was on the second alignment. So we're going to have 3 numbers. And if you don't think campaigns are going to fight furiously over which number matters more and who really won, we're going to be in a spin factory here that's going to power every Iowa turbine for the next 7 months.
It's a renewable source of energy tonight.
I can imagine. So, Alex, if there's one thing that I've learned about Iowa voters is they are very proud of being the first in the nation, and thus they pay very close attention to what the candidates are saying, what their platforms are. What are the issues that are most important to them?
Well, let me first say, among Democratic voters, the specter of impeachment, that ongoing saga, that has been, I think, a motivating factor for them, but that has not animated their concerns in town halls and community events across this state. You are hearing, and I will say candidates of both stripes, both the moderate Democrats and the progressive Democrats, understand that this is about the economy, this is about jobs, to some degree it's about climate change, trade, which has adversely affected a lot of Iowans. They are not talking about Donald Trump, Russia, and Ukraine. I think fear about another term for President Trump is animating voters, and it is also making them, I think, honestly, they're having a hard time making a decision about who they really want to caucus for. I mean, there's a question about electability, and underneath that, undergirding that, is a lot of economic anxiety.
And I would just pick up on that point and say, I've never detected the kind of anxiety I've detected among Iowa Democratic voters about getting it right. Who's the right choice? What's the best way to go? They're not paralyzed, but I'm telling you, they are going through this thought process over and over again, rethinking it, going over to this candidate, moving back. That's one of the reasons the polling numbers here have been so fluid. People have risen and fallen because Iowa Democratic voters keep weighing what's the best thing. Is it hard, progressive, big ideas, boldness, challenge Trump, or is it something that is more electable nationwide? They're really trying to figure this out. And it's weighing on them in ways I've never seen before.
There's a lot of anxiety. You will see people at Sanders events holding Sanders signs, wearing Budaj buttons. I mean, that is how fluid and restive the electorate is.
That's so interesting. And I think, Major, that gives me a little insight into the way our latest battleground tracker is sort of shaping up. That we have Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders tied at 25% in the lead there. And I mean, they really do represent different components of the party.
Different components of the party for sure, and different messages to the rest of the country. And this Biden-Sanders contest here has several different layers to it. So Bernie Sanders ran here in 2016. People thought, oh, maybe he'd get 10 or 15%. He nearly beat Hillary Clinton. That was a big shocker to the system here in Iowa. And because of that previous experience, he's deeply organized. His people are very committed to him. He's going to do well, first or second. I can't imagine a scenario where Bernie Sanders doesn't come out of here first or second. But you talk to Biden people, they can imagine him coming in first or fourth. How could you see a variation like that? Well, if he's not well organized, not able in all these various precincts to get those people, maybe the Klobuchar folks who aren't viable, the Steyer people who aren't viable, the Andrew Yang people aren't viable. If Biden can't organize and get those people, he will have missed an enormous opportunity and hurt his own campaign. So it's all going to come down to Biden's ability in that second alignment to get people who are up for grabs. If he does, he'll finish strongly against Sanders. If he doesn't, he will not only fall well behind, but hamstring his campaign and raise deep doubts about his ability to follow through in New Hampshire, South Carolina, and Nevada.
And I would just add to that, Anne-Marie, you know, when you talk to the Warren campaign, they understand that a huge part of a win tonight is going to be the sales pitch to question caucus goers who are on the line, right? They have been rehearsing the sales pitch with their precinct captains so that they can get those moderate voters who may be still making the choice and get them over to their side of the line. That's how granular they are getting with caucus night.
To Alex's great point there, if there's one thing I will say about Elizabeth Warren and her approach here in Iowa, attention to detail.
Yeah.
And she's left nothing to chance. For the months I've talked to Iowa Democrats, her campaign has been frequently mentioned as the best and most organized across the state. And I do detect kind of a late, if not surge, reevaluation on the positive side for Elizabeth Warren. I would not be surprised to see her come in a strong second, maybe a strong third.
Yeah, after what has been a narrative about momentum loss, you are feeling the Warren campaign not on its heels, but maybe playing offense a little bit because precisely as Major outlines, they have been so organized. They have some of the really the most seasoned vets running their Iowa operation, and they have not taken the state for granted in any precinct.
And what about Pete Buttigieg, right? He was the only person in the top 5 that wasn't sidelined by impeachment. So he's been able to spend his time there, shaking hands, you know, meeting people. How's he shaping up?
I would say Pete Buttigieg has already won one award, farthest fastest.
Yeah.
I mean, just think where he started, and to think with the basically embedded disadvantages of almost no one knowing who he was, being a relatively small town mayor from a conservative state, Indiana, and having almost zero profile, not only nationally, but even regionally, and being a strong, well-organized competitor here, he has made himself a force. Does he have a second or third act after Iowa? Hard to know. But a strong finish here would, I think, just basically say this guy's for real. At least as someone who you have to take seriously, is very good rhetorically, is very good in town halls, and built a decent organization. Those things were not assumable about Pete Buttigieg when he entered this race.
No, his ground game has been very impressive in the state. They're highly prepared. It's very, very organized. I mean, we keep saying that, but Buttigieg really does stand out from the pack. And in the closing week of this race, he was going to parts of the state that other candidates weren't going to. He is trying to scrape up those mythic Trump-Obama voters. He believes, you know, central to his message is unifying the country. Who's going to be president the day after Donald Trump's administration is sunsetted, and you know that is very much animating the closing days of his sales pitch to Iowa voters.
And the one thing that does hold him back is this idea of getting it right and electability. I talked to several Iowans who say, you know what, South Bend is about the same size as Waterloo, Iowa. Is that enough to be president of the United States? And that is the thing, as this electability question becomes front of mind as people have to decide tonight. I think it's the one thing that is the wind in the face of Pete Buttigieg and might knock him down a little bit.
Yeah.
All right. Great analysis, Major and Alex. Thank you so much.
You got it.
Thank you.
Go get breakfast.